Right, ladies and gentlemen, we have about 15 minutes to engage in a lively discussion with our panelists. Don't all rush. But while you're thinking up your questions, yes, we have one already, please.
So thank you. Well, I think the concept of social investment sounds, of course, very compelling. And I have to tell you that I went through 4 investment processes. Finally, we rejected 2, and we are still struggling with the 2 others. And why? I think in the beginning you are talking about social impact and about the common good, but at the end, and it turns very quickly to a very, very tough financial observation, and you are doing striptease day and night, and you deliver the figures after figures, and I think on the counterparty, investment funds, they are a little bit, let's say, reserved in telling or giving transparency. This is my experience out of talking to 4 funds already. On the other side, it is a lack of, let's say, understanding, I think, what are the needs for the social entrepreneurs. And we have an exchange among our Schwab and Ashoka fellows that we feel a little bit not mistreated, maybe that's a bit too tough, but I think we feel a little bit, how to say, not recognized in the way we want to be recognized. And that's the reason why I think a lot of deals are not coming up finally. And knowing, I think, that there's a lot of interest from wealthy people who want to invest in funds, and I think they are coming up, and our EVPA is a wonderful example. They grow very rapidly. On the other side, there's a lack of deals. I don't know how many deals finally all these investment funds can really manage. So my understanding is there is a lot of interest on the investment side, but there is a lot of, let's say, reservation from the investee side, and to make it short, there is not enough, let's say, there are not enough deals. I don't know if you do agree. Maybe a question to Rob. So how many deals finally were set up in the social investment sector the last 5 years?
I don't know what the number is. There are far too few deals. There's absolutely no question about that. And you know, even in Europe, we sort of have maybe a 20-year time perspective on this. I mean, I'm actually encouraged by how much progress there has been in terms of moving from pure grant making and, say, pure philanthropy towards a social investment or investment-minded type of financing. I mean, even in 5 years, I've seen progress. And, you know, 5 years is just a blip in terms of the funding for that market. You know, in the UK, we just recently revised our charity law. Well, the last time we did that was 600 years ago. So we kind of don't look at these things very often. But at least, you know, I'm beginning to see movement on this landscape. And it's being driven by entrepreneurs that we have in abundance in this room today. It has to be driven by that. And what we're looking for is a market for finance which responds to the needs that you have to grow and develop your enterprises.
Additionally, I also think that a lot of the funds see the reason why for the lack of deals is actually the major obstacle, from what I can understand, is management capacity. And I think that's where a lot of more, I wouldn't say enlightened, but funds that have recognized this issue have addressed this issue by actually allocating some amount of resources to provide intellectual development within the organization. And it's not to say that nonprofits or social enterprises are not well managed, but they're chronically undercapitalized, right? So the idea is to help build a mechanism which addresses this issue, and this will, I think, in the future address the issue of deal flow down the line.
Therefore, what you've really said is what David started with, it was hard to bring the social sector and investors together because they speak a different language. So perhaps the broader question is, how do we encourage our social causes to become social enterprises? What does it take to evolve the sector into a form in which investors and venture philanthropists would take an interest? Any of our panelists would like to take this on?
Well, there are many social investing funds out there that want to go beyond grant making, and they want to do double bottom line investing where there's both financial and social return. But there's not, number one, there's not that many socially transforming entities that are ready to take on that type of financing or, that look right. What I've discovered is that I have a couple of startups, and even though I have quite a bit of track record, it's very hard to raise money beyond angel investing when you really want to get going into the marketplace with a new business, a new product or service, because most social venture funds that are going beyond grants and doing debt and some equity are risk adverse. They want to see that you have some sales going on. So there's a real lack of money for that sort of beyond angel investing when you really want to start up in the market. I think that one of the biggest problems in the social sector is that the social sector is fragmented. It's not visible to the financial sector, and so I think the success of the iFund for Deutsche Bank had to do with being able to interact with the International Agency for Prevention of Blindness, which is a big umbrella group of eye care organizations. So working through that affinity group, they were able to access deal flow and have sort of leading world-class experts in eye care for all aspects, particularly the sustainability aspect, be their advisors to vet investments, because they as a financial institution didn't have any knowledge of that. We're doing the same thing in the solar realm, where as we raise this fund, we're bringing on board many experts in technology and financing, groups that run large private equity, so that they can be the voice for vetting these investments in the eyes of our investing group. So I would say that a lot of it has to do with coming up with the right investing pool where it's not one-off, but where you're aggregating investments, and then looking at what the risk-return profile is of the group in the aggregate, and then bringing together different investors with different risk-return appetites and aggregating that risk returns so that it matches up with your investing pool. And not many groups are doing that, and I think that it's very challenging.
I could just add, I don't think that all social ventures of different sorts should be and can be social enterprises. I think we will always have non-profit, traditional charities needing grant finance. I think that is part of our landscape, and I don't think that's a bad thing. But of course, many non-profits don't really understand how they could exploit earned income funding streams. And there are specialist funds like Nest that I mentioned in Central Europe that actually help charities develop their enterprising business models. In the case of Speaking Up, which I opened with, Craig had the ambition to grow substantially. And in fact, he did grow around six-fold over 4 years, which for any business is a huge pace of growth. But he also realized that he couldn't grow as a charity, because if he grew that pace as a charity, he would simply be having to subsidize that through grants and grants and grants further on. So he changed his business model. Before the investment from Impetus, 2/3 of his income came from grants and public donations. And after 3 years, 2/3 of his income now came from selling consulting services. So of course he was able to fuel his growth on changing his business model so that at the heart of his enterprise he had a trading model.
Yes, please, Usha.
Usha Management Center. As you know, as you rightly mentioned, a lot of the venture philanthropy is connected to equity firms. After the fiasco for the past 2 years that they have actually put us into, would you say that social causes and charities should embrace the business model that they have set forth as the way to go, or is there something they would learn from the social causes in areas of governance and transparency and stakeholder responsibility?
Yes, David, have a go.
Yeah, I think that the financial crisis is just the financial system running amok and getting out of control, where where so many different financial instruments were built upon layer upon layer upon layer in the end it was all built on adjustable rate mortgages given to poor people, where the rates went up, and that was the toxicity that was in the marketplace that caused the big crash. I think that sort of going back to basics and investing and how investments are made, I think that that there can be success. I mean, for the iFund, Deutsche Bank put in altogether we had 1.5 million in first loss cushion money. Deutsche Bank and a few other investors were willing to take the hit if there was a loss, and that helped bring in the other investors, so that the fund, even though it has a modest rate of return, 5% interest, I think, and for some investors it's 1%, for some it's 2%, for some it's 4%, for some it's 5%. With that kind of rapport appearance, some of these one of our investors is a pension fund, a Norwegian insurance company called Storebrand. They're making 5%, and that's a reasonable investment for them. But there are the sort of the subordinated tranches that are taking some of the risk level out of the fund for them, so that it almost looks like a normal investment for them. So I would say that yes, I mean, I'm sorry to go into all this jargon, but I think that if you can go back to basics, the social sector really needs to be able to tap into capital markets to grow, and they can't. If social impact entities are to become sort of a global force rather than just a philanthropic drop in the bucket, they need to be able to tap into commercial investing.
It's not a good time, is it, to talk about great business models when we've been through this enormous crisis, and it's not appropriate to go into those details. But I would, let's not be painted into a false dichotomy about business bad, social good. My experience is working in this field is that there are a lot of very sound business principles which social entrepreneurs embrace and find useful. And some of that is delivered by people who work in the private sector, and that's good. There are a whole many other things about running a business which need to be learned from social entrepreneurs, and their passion and integrity and so on. So let's see a two-way street in this in the future. I partly work in a business school, and I think much of the financial crisis is the result of the MBAs that we have churned out over the last several years. So let that reflect back on the way that we teach business in our education centers.
Well, we have precious little time left, so I'll give the last word to Dev.
No, I think just another point to add is that a lot of development in Asia particularly has been driven by international aid. Now those pools of funding are actually drying up, so a lot of indigenous organizations in the region have to be a little bit more creative. So I think, yes, a lot of groups will have to start thinking about new models of how they would continue their mission in the future. But I also think that, like Rob said, there will always be models that need to rely on traditional philanthropy. So perhaps in the future is to start thinking about hybrids. Yeah, thanks.
Yes, well, it seems to me then that at the moment the field is dominated by players such as large venture philanthropy funds that sort of unidirectionally seek out the social causes to help them to become businesses. I think perhaps the future, as we have heard from our speakers this afternoon, is that perhaps the social causes and the workers at the ground level should have a larger vision to scale up and to expand their operations and to have that desire to become more business-like in their approach, so that they become suitable targets for the venture philanthropists to take on. So on the one hand, we need more venture philanthropists and people willing to invest in social causes. On the other hand, we need those of us who are involved in social work to have this larger vision and the ambition to reach out and become social enterprises. But we've also heard that not every social cause is amenable to this sort of evolution. And perhaps there will still remain a number of social causes where the charitable route of funding, the Robin Hoods, robbing the rich and giving to the poor, will still be the most efficient and the most useful way of funding their work. So, ladies and gentlemen, It seems as though there is never enough money to begin with, and in Singapore parlance we say money no enough. But certainly time is also not enough to really expand on this topic and do a really good job on it. But don't you think that our three speakers have done a fantastic job in giving us an overview with really encouraging examples? And we hope that you'll go away stimulated to think about this in the fields in which you work. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.